Good morning. How are you? Today's question has come from a Polish lady who's living in Panama by the name of Bozina Kowalczyk. Bozina Kowalczyk. And her question is, why does consciousness assume the form of a body? And ultimately, what is the purpose of evolution? Tough question, but here is what I'm going to attempt as an answer. Awareness of pure consciousness is formless, dimensionless, without cause, irreducible, and fundamental. It evolves as species of consciousness. So as humans, we are a particular species of consciousness. And all other life forms are also a species of consciousness with its own body-mind, and as a result, its own experience of the world. Think of the body-mind not as a container of consciousness, but as an experience in consciousness. So consciousness experiences itself with maximum diversity. And it experiences itself as the subject-object relationship. And it experiences itself as various species of consciousness. Why so? Well, consciousness being infinite, the infinite ground of being, wants to experience itself with maximum diversity. We, as human beings, are the only living creatures who can manage our own evolution. We can decide to progress and grow, or to devolve and ultimately destroy ourselves. This isn't a Darwinian proposition. Darwin's theory of evolution is based on the struggle for survival, where two factors dominate: being able to mate or reproduce and find enough food. Homo sapiens, our species of consciousness, escaped these factors for the most part in recent times. Our evolution moved from primitive survival needs into the realm of consciousness. This turns out to be the most fascinating aspect of being human, and not just in the abstract. Current planetary crises, from climate change to famine, epidemic disease and overpopulation, starkly inform us that we are not managing our own evolution. Making nuclear weapons, whether it's in North America or in the United States or in the rest of the so-called civilized world, is collective psychosis and collective madness. So what can we do to further our own evolution? So one entry point is to look at consciousness in a new way. In some form, all living things have evolved, not just physically, but in terms of consciousness. And this fact is all important when considering our own future. So I'm consulting notes right now from an article that I just wrote for the San Francisco Chronicle. Take the presence of sunlight striking the earth. Primitive one-cell creatures early on developed the ability to move toward the light, which holds true for both plants and animals. Finding the light is a function of life, and with every function, evolution invents new forms. Certain one-celled animals developed hair-like cilia, for example, that move rhythmically like oars to propel them to the light. Sunflowers adapted to face the sun as it moves across the sky. Amazing, isn't it? In tropical forests, vines develop the ability to wind their way up to trees to grab their ration of sunlight. Evolutionists are physically minded, so they would assert that these ingenious forms are what is most important, carrying out the function of reaching the light. But the impulse that lies behind form and function is just as important. In an amazing way, this impulse can be turned upside down so that blind cave fish need no light and therefore they can dispense with functioning eyesight. Similarly, at the depths of the ocean, are myriad creatures, including some species of shark that never see any light. Seeing the darkness can be an evolutionary impulse, seeing in the darkness. What this tells me is that without considering the species of consciousness, we will never fully understand evolution. It's ironic that human beings claim a patent on higher consciousness. We feel singular and unique in our ability to reason, invent, discover, ponder, and create. But this has created a blind spot. We didn't see until very recently the infinite diversity of mind that is part of all living things. And yet, in the deeper reality, we are members of one body, one mind, one consciousness. Other species of consciousness exist in a world totally unlike ours. We cannot conceive of what it is like to use a bat sonar or the signaling of humpback whales across hundreds of miles. We cannot orient ourselves in the ocean using sensitive depth sensors the way, say, fish do, or migrate thousands of miles with unerring certainty the way birds and monarch butterflies do. Yes, we can observe the form and function that marks other species of consciousness by examining genes, brain tissue, and all manner of behavior in so-called lower creatures. But if you stand back, every species of consciousness is on its own evolutionary track and has evolved holistically. The eagle has an eyeball larger than a human's, and this enables it to see small prey from hundreds of feet in the air. A specific form, oversized eye, is linked to a specific function, hunting for food. But an eagle also constitutes the entire history of birds, the development of feathers, the appetite for meat or vegetation as food, and dozens of other adaptations that constitute its unique eagleness. Hummingbirds made completely different adaptations following their own species of consciousness. So let's say that we accept for the moment that the mental and physical side of evolution are totally necessary and complementary. Now, of course, I say this knowing fully well that traditional evolutionary biologists will totally disagree with everything I'm saying right now. So what I'm proposing is not Darwinian. I don't pretend to be a neo-Darwinist. But several important ideas flow from giving consciousness a place in the evolutionary table. The first idea that flows from accepting consciousness is actually a question, which actually Bozina asked. What is consciousness trying to accomplish? What is the purpose? If we can answer that, we know what the future holds. For if you see the goal in advance, you can manage the pace and direction of evolution. The evidence, as we gaze upon the Earth's biosphere, is that consciousness possesses certain basic traits. It is creative, it works intimately with form and function, meaning that it is involved in how creatures develop their physical structure and behavior. So the physical structure, the behavior, the form, it follows the purpose of consciousness evolving into maximum diversity. But as it does so, consciousness also self-correcting, self-regulating. It knows how to experiment, use feedback to move away from useless adaptations. So from these basic traits, which can be found in even primitive one-celled organisms, a flood of other traits follow. In fact, being the only creatures we assume who can think about evolution, it's fair to say that whatever makes us human is embedded in the fabric of consciousness. Not just creativity, but intelligence, love, a desire to expand, to grow, and the capacity for self-reflection. So this, I predict, will lead to a new phase of our evolution if we survive as a species. And I call this phase of evolution the Metahuman. So more on the Metahuman as I come back in a minute, in 15 seconds. So here I am back again, and what I'd like to tell you now is that I'm drafting a new book. It's called Metahuman. And I propose with complete conviction that the evolution of consciousness will determine the future of Homo sapiens, our future. Everything this implies is crucial for each person, not just our species. Here are some of the relevant points. Number one, finding a new story for ourselves and the planet. The old story is dangerous and will cause our extinction. In this new story, cooperation, compassion, non-violence, and care for the environment will become totally necessary. Number two, relying on creativity over destructiveness. Number three, giving consciousness a primary place in education. Number four, developing a worldview that turns away from materialism and technology as the prime movers of society. Technology is a necessary part of the solution, but we must minimize its destructive side and direct a future technology for a more just, more peaceful, more sustainable, happier and healthier world. Number five, in place of externals as the measure of progress, more money, more advanced weapons, power of the strong over the weak, inner values will become the true mark of evolution. Self-awareness, inner fulfillment, spirituality. And number seven, fundamental reality will be couched in terms of consciousness creating and evolving within itself. In human terms, this means accepting that we live in a human universe entirely, created by constructs and stories we project onto pure consciousness. Only by seeing our creative role in shaping reality can we become better, more evolved creatures. Okay, so long ago, we as a human species developed an infinite capacity for managing the future, even though we are still subject to natural forces. Every flood, hurricane, drought, or earthquake can be made survivable if we place an emphasis on that. Potentially every disease is survivable, and modifications of genes are theoretically feasible. What we face isn't a fixed limitation. Instead, it's our own self-destructive, anti-evolutionary impulse that have taken us into violence, crime, wars, famines, political strife, and us versus them thinking. These are not innate aspects of human nature. The truth is that we have been managing our evolution for centuries while carrying the burdens of outworn traits like anger and fear. We can no longer indulge in these primitive behaviors because modern capacities combined with primitive tendencies can lead to our extinction. So I'm going to work on this with you. Together we will embark on conscious evolution, manage our evolution, and find purpose, meaning in everything, remembering that ultimately love is the only reality. Love is the ultimate truth at the heart of all creation. So this is my answer to Bozina Kowalczyk. I hope you like the answer, you agree that together we can create that critical mass of consciousness that will lead us to a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world. I'm looking at all your comments, and I think you're all in agreement, and I like that. Thank you for sending me your beautiful messages, and thank you for sharing your ideas with me, and please share this video with others if you think it is useful, and the more we share our ideas on conscious evolution with each other, the more we will help create the world that we want to live in, and that we want our children to live in, and then their children, because we are always recycling as life. Ramanand Dixit is here, and he's committed. Lisa Health, thank you. Roseanne Reader, love is the only reality. Thank you. All of you are such wonderful beings. Thank you for sharing this information and this vision with everyone that you know. Take care, and God bless.